Good afternoon, guys. Welcome back to another video. Today is wiring day for the fuel system. So I have the full iWire kit. I'm going to be doing a full how-to video on how to install this. There's not a whole lot of guidance online. I mean, iWire has their install guide, and then there's a few videos on the single pump, but really not much on the double pump. So let's take a look at the kit, and I'll kind of go over all the contents, and we'll go from there. We don't have a lot of space. The car kind of takes up a lot of the garage, but right now we're working on a little barbecuer, and it'll work just fine. So inside this kit, it looks extremely intimidating. There's a lot of wires, but it's really not all that bad. This red wire runs to a circuit breaker next to the battery, and then this is the little connector to connect it from the circuit breaker to the battery itself. Now this big jumbled mess of wires, it's really not a big jumbled mess. This line connects to another one of these lines, and it's power for, I believe, pump 1. So this connector, or little harness here, this will tap right into your radium hanger. This covers your fuel temp and fuel level, and I believe this plugs right into the stock harness in the car. Now this relay here will also mount in the back of the car with that. And then these black wires, this is for your hob switch. So these will run all the way to the front of the car with the red wire. And lastly, this big guy here, this is going to get plugged in the back of the car, but I'll show that when the time comes. So the first thing we need to do is start pulling off all of our little plastic floor trim pieces, since our power wire, the antifuse wire, and the hob switch wire, it's all going to be running underneath these little pieces, and it's going to be hidden nice out of the way. So all of these are just held on with little clips, so just nice and easy, just kind of reach under there and start popping them all up. I mean, I can do this one-handed. It's really not that hard, just like that. So all of our lines are going to be run straight through this little gap here, and that way it's all nice tucked away. I don't have a lot of space here, so I'm just going to pull off all these pieces, and then I will show you guys everything I took off. But yeah, everything's just held on by clips. It's pretty simple. Just be a little bit careful, because some of them are delicate. I have broken plastic pieces before, so but yeah, just get a finger under there, nice and slow. It'll pop right off. Switching to the GoPro, because it's going to get a little tight. But before I forget, make sure if you have a battery in your car, disconnect it. I don't have one in here right now, but that is very important when you're dealing with electric. Make sure you disconnect the battery. I have my power wire here, and then this is the connector for the hob switch with the ground that's also connected to it. I just have that running from the back of the car. We have all the trim pieces off, like I was saying. So this guy's off, the floor piece is off, the little corner is off, and then the floor piece in the back as well. We're gonna go down underneath our pedals here, and if you look right up there, that grommet, we're gonna have to cut a little slit in, and we're gonna run our hob switch connector and our power wire right through it. So I believe the top slot, it's very hard to show, but I believe it's empty. So we're just gonna cut a little slit in that, slide the connectors through, and then we'll pull it right up on top of the inner fender. So now looking where our battery would be, we have the power wire and the hob switches right here. This is going to plug directly into the sensor, and then I'm going to have the sensor probably vacuum from right here on the intake manifold. And then the ground for it, I'll probably honestly just ground straight to the battery. Now what I want to do, if you look up in there, you'll see that big harness. I'm just going to zip tie these wires right to that, and that way we got no movement. And we don't have wires bouncing around under our inner fender. So now looking in the driver's side door jamb, you can see we have that power wire and the hob switch wire run nicely under the floorboard. And then coming to the passenger side, it's a little dark back here, but you can see we kind of come right through the crack, and then it's going to run right up the back underneath the seat over to and near the pump, and then it'll cut back into the trunk. Now there's one more wire we have to run to the front of the car, and that's this guy here. This is for an antifuse. Now this wire isn't going all the way to the front like the rest of them. It's going to come up, run in the same route as all these, but it'll stop right in this vicinity because it's going to be going to this fuse panel right here. We're going to throw in an antifuse in there, and then this will tap right into that. So the white part will be at the back of the car, and we'll run just this little tip all the way to the front. I'm gonna go ahead, get this little wire run, and that way we can get all our trim pieces back on and we can start working on the pump and then eventually the back of the car. I'm waiting last, as far as I can, to the back of the car because we're gonna have to open up the garage door and then we lose all of our heat. So let's get this one run and then we'll start working on the pump. Alright, so moving into the back seat. Sorry if there's a little background noise. We got our little heater going. But this connector here, this is going to plug into our factory plug that goes into the top of the pumps. Now, you'll have 4 wires off of this. You got your black and blue and then yellow and white. These will plug into your fuel level and your fuel temp on your radium hanger. So I believe black and blue is fuel level, and then the white and yellow is for the fuel temp. And it doesn't matter, there's no power and ground, so you can mix and match. It doesn't matter which one goes where. So let's go ahead and get this wired up, and then this will plug directly into the factory connector, like that. Now we have our fuel level and our fuel temp hooked up, wired in, and we just have it plugged into the stock connector, kind of tucked away. Now, this is the pump 1 connector. So I believe blue is negative and white is positive for pump 1, which, as you can see over here, you got pump 1 and you got a positive and a negative. Pump 2, you'll see in your kit, you have a wire that's labeled pump 2, comes off of your connector in the back of the car. This is going to go as your positive for pump 2, and then the negative for pump 2 is this ground right here. So this is just going to ground right to the metal in the back seat. So let's get all this wired up. Like I said, you got blue and white, positive and negative. Positive is white, negative is blue. That's going to go on pump 1, and then your ground, this is negative for pump 2, and this is positive for pump 2, and it is labeled, as you can see. So let's get that on there, and then after that, pretty much everything on the pump is done, minus I still have to put my crossover line in. I don't have that yet. But as far as electrical goes, that's it. Just so you guys are aware, iWire does have a nice install guide on their site. I took some screenshots showing all the important wiring stuff that I need to know, and that's exactly what I'm following along here. Makes life pretty simple, but if you guys are visual learners, I'm here for you. As I'm about to tighten this last bolt, I just realized that these wires, the power and ground for the pumps, they have to run out of here, which means we can either run directly under the little cover or we can cut through this little grommet and run through here. I'm going to cut through the grommet. You only need like a little less than ½ slice in here and you can fit all 4 wires down just fine. So I'm going to do that real quick and then we'll get these wires run through there and then plugged back in on the pump. everything in the pump is now 100% wired. We have our pump 1 power and ground coming up here, and then our pump 2 power and ground on the other side. So it's neat and organized. Now this plug is going to be coming off from the back of the car. This guy, the black connector, is going to plug directly into there. And then this white connector will plug into the red add-a-fuse line that we ran earlier, which we have kind of curled up over here. So those will connect. And then everything else besides this ground, we are going to connect right on this bolt here. Everything else is in the back of the car, and I'm probably going to get to that tomorrow because, as you can see, it's pretty dark out, and this car is right up against the garage door. So, yeah, I'd rather have some natural light on the subject because I know this light in here, it kind of messes with the camera, and it's probably shaking a little bit. So, tomorrow, once the light comes out, we'll do the back of the car. But for right now, I'm just going to hook up this ground. We'll get all this plugged in. I'm going to finish cleaning up all of that. And then we'll probably call it for the night. And I'll pick up on this tomorrow. All right, little update. Pretty much done with what we can do for tonight. I did kind of clean up the rest of the wires we had here. So, yeah, power, add-a-fuse wire, and our little black hob switch wires all run. There was a little extra slack in the hob switch wire, so I kind of just wound it up here, zip-tied it. Coming out of the pump, we have our blue and white, and then our 2 black wires, which are kind of zip tied down in this junction here. The ground for pump 2, I ended up following the line that was already here, and I went kind of up behind the seat, behind the buckle, looped around, and grounded it there, just so it's nice and clean, tied up with another line. It was a pretty long wire, so I didn't want to just have a bunch of slack laying around. And then everything else is going to run straight up to the back, including that big power wire, and we'll get to that tomorrow. It's the next day now, and we are ready to finish the wiring for the fuel system. What we got to do is get the hatch open and then start pulling trim pieces off to get to the area where we need to start tapping in for the rest of the wiring. Now, the only other things other than that, we have to run our hob switch, and then we also need to just hook up our battery and tap in that add-a-fuse. And I need to go pick up a 15 amp fuse from O'Reilly's. And that's what we're running the add-a-fuse with the 7.5 amp that's already in the fuse box. I believe it is snowing outside, so we're going to try to make this quick. Let's get the garage door open, get the hatch open, and get to work. Oh yes. Ooh, is that locked? If you ran into the same problem I just did where the door was locked and I couldn't get it open, there's no battery in the car. So there's a little access door right in the middle of the back of the hatch. Open that up and there's a little lever in there. You can just push to the side and you can open your hatch from the inside. So we got to pull all the flooring out, just kind of, whatever you got to do to get all the flooring out so you expose your spare tire. And then this trim piece has to come out. I believe there's 2 clips on the back. And then this should be able to come out, maybe 3, I'm not too sure yet. And then this top piece just has to come out enough so that we can pull this lower piece out, because all of our fuel wiring is right in here.
Pinky promise you could be. Alright, so looking in the back of the car, I have all of our wires ran to the back.
These were all the ones that we kind of fed through by the pump. So here's what has to happen. I have this kind of open enough so that I can get back there. Let me see if I can pull it enough to show some light. Up there, you can kind of see there is the stock fuel pump module. So we need to unplug the stock one, and then this is gonna plug into it, and then the stock plug is gonna plug into the female end. It's as simple as that. The ground, we're gonna run out and ground probably right on this bolt here. We're just gonna kind of scrape the paint away on here so we get a nice secure ground. Now this relay and this big guy here, we're gonna mount up side by side in those holes that you can kind of see underneath the module. I know it's really tough to see in there. Let's see if I can get my big old lens. There you go. Now, once those are in, all we need to do is plug, this plug is gonna plug in right here. This plug is gonna plug in right here. And our power wire, which is right here, is gonna plug in right here. And then you slap the boot over the top, which we have right here to make sure we're all safe in the back. And that's it. Once all that's mounted up and you have your fuel pump control module guy hooked up, that's all you gotta do in the back of the car. Then just clean it up and we'll be done. It's like a whole 5 degrees out here, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do this real quick. It's really tight, really hard to get the camera in there, but once I'm done, I'll stick our big old lens in there, and that way you guys will be able to see if you are the visual learner like I am. So we have our control plugged in up top where the stock one was. We unplugged the stock one, plugged the new one in, and then plugged the stock into the female end. Down low we have our little relay mounted, and then our big brick is like what I like to call it. We got our power mounted on top, and then our little blue connector, and then the white and yellow wires into the bottom. So super simple. I know it looks like a mess in there and it's pretty hard to show, but that is how it goes. Now make sure if you guys are running 2 pumps, you have 2 fuses in that brick. There comes with supplied one, and then you have to add a second one if you are running the 2 pumps. I got my kit used from a buddy, so a lot of it was already put together. There are a few things, a few different pins you have to put in, I believe, if you buy the kit directly from iWire. But it's super simple, and it's pretty freaking easy to install as well. So that ground that I was saying, I just ended up grounding it right to this piece. I scraped some of the paint off just so we have a nice secure ground, but yeah, that's it. So one last looking in the back seat, we got all of our wires run nicely to the pump, and then whatever has to go to the back runs up to the back. We got our ground right there. Then coming to the back, we have our wires run right up alongside this piece. We couldn't tuck it behind this because there's still clips that have to clip in, but then it runs underneath and goes to our control module underneath or behind the plastic. So everything's all cleaned up. We can get our carpet back in, and then I'll show you guys the hob switch up front, which is super easy. Now for the hob switch. So I went and picked up, let me see, this, I believe this is a 1/4 inch barb to 1/8 inch NPT female. Now this is going to allow me to run a boost line or vacuum line, whatever you want to call it, 1/4 inch, and I'm going to run that to this port here on the intake manifold. Now because I'm running a stock intake manifold, I can't thread it into the bottom like I can on like an AMS or a Process West, but I can run this boost line straight to here, have its own vacuum reference point, and we should be good there. So remember, we ran the wire up with our power wire, so this will just plug into the back of the sensor, and I'm probably going to mount that somewhere right in here, and we'll just run that boost line, kind of tuck it away under the intake manifold and over to that port right there. And now our hob switch is installed. So I tucked this right nice up against the fuse box down there. You can see I tied it just to this little bracket. Our battery tie down goes into this hole, so we couldn't put it here, but I have our wires kind of tied nice and neat around the side, and then our vacuum line runs down underneath, kind of comes up, follows the AOS hose there under the manifold and then pops back up into our vacuum port. So pretty clean for what we got to deal with. The thing where I've kind of come to the conclusion with is there's just hoses everywhere, and as much as you try to clean it up, there's always going to be hoses everywhere. So just going to kind of get used to that look there, and then we can slap a fatty turbo in that corner. The very last thing for wiring this fuel system is the add a fuse. Now, I need to go pick up a 15 amp fuse to put in the second hole, and then the 7.5 that's already in the fuse box will go in the other hole. Normally your kit will come with one of these. I got mine used, like I said, and he didn't have the add a fuse, so I just need to pick up a 15 amp fuse for this one, and we'll be good. If you guys don't know where this fuse box is that you're tapping into, let me show you. So you come down here on the driver's side, pop open this little door here, and you're gonna find that number 11 fuse in there that's marked on iWire's guide. You're gonna pull that fuse out, add it into the second hole in your add a fuse, plug in the add a fuse, tap it into that red wire that we ran earlier, and that's it. I just went and slapped the battery in just so you can see how everything clears. So our hob switch is down there, nice tucked away, can't even see it. And then this will be our power wire. The circuit breaker, you'll know what it is when you see your kit. It'll sit somewhere in here, it's like a little red box. This goes to that. And then we have this piece here, which will go from the circuit breaker to your power. Also, the ground for the hob switch, I ended up just running behind the fuse box and grounded it out right in there. You can see. Made a quick trip to AutoZone, picked up some 15 amp fuses. And if you can see in there, we have our add a fuse tapped into hole 11 right where it's supposed to be. Just make sure you put that other fuse in there, and then it wires right into the red wire that we ran earlier. And with that, we are done wiring the fuel system. The only thing we didn't do was the circuit breaker on the battery, which I don't have yet, but that's super easy, guys. All it is, this power wire hooks to the circuit breaker. The wire that we still have in that box hooks to the other end and just goes to the power. That's it. It's just one extra wire that we haven't put on. So if you were like me and you were super intimidated when you opened the box and just saw a ton of wires, hopefully this helps. If not, leave a comment. I'll try my best to get back to you guys as soon as possible if you guys are struggling putting this in. But honestly, it's not all that bad. So last thing we have to do on this car is get the frickin' turbo in. So I'm going to start working on that. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out. See y'all later.